Welcome to our weekly 3-minute therapy podcast with Mick Berry and me. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I help people overcome various emotional and behavioral problems. And Mick is my co-author and expert on REBT. REBT stands for Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, a type of therapy that revolutionized the psychotherapy movement starting in the mid 50s and devised by Albert Ellis. And this therapy, to a large extent, is a reaction against the earlier popular therapy, which was more psychoanalytically or Freudian oriented. And we'll be discussing some of that in today's podcast. REBT says that our emotions and behaviors don't come from situations themselves. Situations can't force us to feel anything, but it's our thinking about those situations that's the problem. And particular type of thinking that cause emotional and behavioral problems we call demands, musts, and shoulds, and such as I must do well and get approval or else I'm no good, which leads to anxiety and depression. You absolutely must treat me well. And if you don't, you're no good, which leads to anger, hostility, and resentment. And my life must go well. And if it doesn't, then my life is no good. And that leads to also to depression, procrastination, and addictions to escape the horrible life you think you have. Mick, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it sounds thorough to me.
Okay, and then you suggested an interesting topic for today, Mick, about dreaming. So we'll discuss REBT and dreaming. Did you want to start off?
Well, I know Carl Jung put a lot of attention on dreaming and imagery and implications and meaning behind things. And I know that Robert Bly, who was a poet, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he advocated paying attention to your dreams for creativity. And I do think that there's validity in that, as your imagination runs wild in your dreams and you can end up with some pretty crazy things. I think Battle Hymn of the Republic came from a dream, and several other songs have come from dreams, and lots of creative people have taken their dreams and turned them into something. But as far as rationality goes and things to live by, I think there's very, very great limitations in paying any attention to dreams whatsoever. I think they're pretty much just our minds running wild, and sometimes it's useful, but I'd say most of the times it's pretty ridiculous. I don't think REBT really puts much attention on dreaming whatsoever, but you could tell me what you've heard Albert Ellis say about dreams.
I don't. I agree with you. I don't think REBT or Albert Ellis puts much energy into discussing dreams, but there are some musts and demands some people have on themselves related to dreams. One of the main ones that some of my clients have had is I must not have nightmares or bad dreams. So sometimes they may have difficulty falling asleep because they're worrying about having a nightmare because they had a nightmare the night before. But often the more you demand you not have nightmares, the more you focus on having nightmares, and it makes it less likely that you won't have them. So one of the main ways to work on that is by acceptance. Just reminding yourself, if I have a nightmare, that's too bad. It's uncomfortable for a very brief period of time, and it's hardly the end of the universe. And if I don't dwell on it and focus on it, then after I wake up, I will have forgotten the dream very, very quickly. And Mick?
Well, I have something to say about getting over the anxiety of dreams, but did you want to finish?
No, why don't you comment on that? And
And
then,
I think this isn't related to REBT directly, but my mother did work in the field of psychology, and I remember when I was a kid, she told me she had a client who was afraid that she was falling off of a building. If she hit the ground and died, she would actually die. And my mother talked her out of that fear by saying, "Well, that's ridiculous to think that just because you think you die in a dream, you would actually die." And this woman said, "Well, there are incidents of that occurring." And mother said, "There are no incidences of that occurring, because if somebody died, nobody would know what they were dreaming."
right. Yeah.
And so that was a very sensible way to get this person to stop worrying about dreaming that she was going to die. And I had a few other friends when I was a kid tell me the same thing, and I pointed out to them, "No, that doesn't make any sense at all." And they told me I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah. And along with what you mentioned, dreaming about falling, that is a common theme of dreams. Another common theme is being chased or pursued by someone. Being naked in public is another common theme, and being paralyzed and unable to move. And I knew someone who, when he woke up in the morning, briefly couldn't move. So, so that is possible briefly, but if you make it into a fear and obsession, I must not be paralyzed, I must not be paralyzed, then all you do is worry about it and it doesn't help. Nick?
Yeah, what I was going to just mention that, people worrying about their dreams are really a recurring theme of falling or being naked in public or whatever the fear is. There's not a whole lot of meaning behind that, or people try to put some meaning behind that. I've found that if the meaning is apparent, then I put meaning into the dream. In other words, if I'm applying for a job and I have a dream that I missed the job, I think that indicates that I have anxiety about not getting the job. It's pretty obvious. There's another dream called the actor's nightmare that actors have, in which have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's where actors are on stage and they don't know their lines and they've got to perform and they have no idea what play they're in or what the lines are. And every actor I've known has had the actor's nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. So that illustrates what you said earlier, and that is often we dream about things we worry about, and
Yeah.
that comes up in our dream.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to mention, I know that Carl Jung has put a lot of attention into interpreting dreams. And personally, well, not just personally, I'd say Albert Ellis would probably agree with me. And you can let me know if you agree with me, but I think putting a lot of interpretation or importance into dreams is a load of bunk. It's a waste of time. And in the field of psychology, there are so many people that come up with these idiotic ideas, and they end up going pretty far with their idiotic ideas. And so, anyway, I'm interested. I've looked at Carl Jung, and I've seen some of the things he's said. And once in a while, he'll say something that's profound. But his overall theories are, I find, and not just I find, but are pretty much useless.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on another tack on dreaming, Patricia Garfield wrote a book called Creative Dreaming. Plan and control your dreams to develop creativity, overcome fears, solve problems. So she has this idea that you can actually plan what's going to be in your dream. And one of the things she has recommended is that if you have a recurrent dream of being chased or pursued, then right before you go to sleep, do imagery and picture that step one is you're being chased and pursued, and step two is you then turn around and face your pursuer. And so that's something that she recommends. That's Patricia Garfield, Creative Dreaming. Yeah, Nick?
And I was going to say, I think I mentioned this, and maybe it was the last podcast. I've even done REBT in dreams, where I'll be facing some situation that I want to get something, and I'll tell myself, well, I don't have to get this. If I don't get it, I'll be okay. and I'll calm myself down in the dream. I've actually done REBT in a dream
Wow, that's amazing.
a few times. Well, is it really that amazing, or is just simply a mental practice that I've done for decades and decades? And so it seems like it would kind of be unusual if it didn't creep into my dreams once in a while, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that could be. That's a good explanation of that.
Yeah. So it's still a matter of demanding to get what we want or accepting that we don't have to get what we want. And even in dreams, if we have desires within the dream, if we turn them into a demand, then I think the dream will become a nightmare. But if it's simply something that we accept that we don't have to have, then it's just a dream.
Yes, and another irrational belief people have sometimes with relation to dreaming is I can't stand having these unpleasant dreams. And obviously, you can stand it. You've stood it, and it's very brief usually. So don't make the mistake of thinking you can't stand what you're standing, Nick.
And I've even found an advantage to nightmares at times when I'm in a relationship and sleeping with a woman. If one of us has a nightmare, it usually wakes the other person up, and the other person comforts the person who is having the nightmare. And it's a nice moment of emotional intimacy. So
Uh-huh.
it would even be kind of tragic not to have a nightmare if you're sleeping with somebody that you're affectionate towards.
Yeah.
Then
Uh-huh.
you would miss the chance to be comforted.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Anything else you want to add, Mick?
Uh, I think this is an interesting topic regarding REBT because REBT really doesn't talk about it much. And I will say, I think it would be possible for me to make the demand, well, Carl Jung must not be right, or Freud must not be right, because I do challenge them a lot because I find their ideas are so ridiculous and useless. And I know that there's still a lot of people that abide by the philosophy of those two people. And I would say that it's open to discussion, and that I personally feel I could prove that Freud and Jung really were ineffective and quite destructive in the field of psychology, didn't really accomplish much, and actually led to a great deal of confusion and detriment to the people that they expose themselves to.
Yeah.
And
Well,
but I will say it's important for me to steer clear of this idea that they must not be right. They must not be right. I must be right. Hey, truth is truth. And if you're a scientist and you respect it, you're open to debate.
yeah, and psychologists must not buy into this nonsense about dreams. And I think they're doing that less and less. I rarely hear these days about uh, psychologists or psychotherapists talking about their clients' dreams. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mick, for the great subject. And that's Mick Berry, my co-host. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, author of 3 Minute Therapy with the website 3minutetherapy.com. Yes, Mick?
Well, I just wanted to say one last thing. One of the things
Yeah.
about Jung and Freud, and I've seen a lot of people talk about, is self actualization, where you reach this place where you are your authentic self and you've attained some sort of state of enlightenment. Uh, RABT does say we are always fallible human beings. And by working on our fallibility, trying to be more rational, we can become less and less fallible. But the idea of achieving some state in which we are no longer fallible is utterly ridiculous and as crazy a venture as anybody could ever undertake. So that's a big distinction between REBT and Jungian and Freudian psychology.
Yeah, and our authentic self is our imperfect, mistake-making self. That's authentic. So trying to
Yeah,
trying to be perfect, uh, you're going for a goal that's
yeah.
inauthentic.
When people make huge mistakes, they're being incredibly authentic. That's actually about as authentic as you can get because human beings are, as Albert Ellis would say, in other words, messed up.
Yeah, right. Okay, very good. Very good. Thanks, Mick, for a good podcast here. And I'd also like to thank Chris Rossini, our tech engineer. Comment below if you have thoughts or questions. Give us a like, a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and volunteer once in a rare while. We have someone who volunteers. They usually survive. So if you're a therapist and you'd like free supervision with about a client you have, we're welcome to provide that for you. Or if you're just a regular person with anxiety or depression and you'd like a free therapy session with us, come on, let us know. And subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
To stay on the rational side of life, which includes sleeping, dreaming, and being awake.